All right, so good evening, everyone. I apologize for the delay. Thank you so much for your patience. Thank you for waiting. And I'm so happy that you took the time out of your busy schedule and your preparation for exams to join us here. I know that right now is a crunch time for a lot of our assignments when we have deadlines coming up. And we just thought that this session would be very helpful in helping you to prepare for this upcoming examination season. We know that it's very different from what we're used to. And so we have Miss Janelle Morgan here with us tonight to help guide us along the process and let us know the do's and don'ts and teach us and leave us with her words of wisdom tonight. So help me welcome Miss Morgan.
But look how she gone as a come on. Good evening, everyone. How are you? Yes, Angel, you know I'm going to ask you that. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I feel like I'm coping and I'm learning and I'm adjusting.
Yes, we're here for the coping. I'm sorry I couldn't be there with you live this evening. I miss you, but I hope you are well.
Yes, I'm trying to stay well. How about you? How are you handling this?
You just shift from your coping and everything. You know, you're trying to stay well. I don't understand.
All right, let me continue to be positive. I am coping. I am
Yes.
good. I am prepared.
You're not easy at all. Thanks for having me, Angel. I see Lady Larmon in here. I did not open the chat. My apologies. Good evening, Asani. Good evening. It's Asta. You have to forgive me if I get the names wrong, right? Well, good evening to each and every one of you who are here. Thank you so much for joining us. I am always grateful when the commuting students office gives me a ring or shoots me a message and is like, yes, let's see what we can get done here. All right, I am seriously hoping that each of you are feeling a little bit okay at the very least. I don't know if where you are, it's raining, what kind of outside is pouring where I am at in the office here. But again, any opportunity we get to interact with students, we like to have it, all right? So first of all, I want this to be as interactive a session as possible. And if you know me, know that's very important to me. I'm seeing a couple names here that I do know, but could we all just kind of chip in, those of you who are willing and able to turn on your mic and just say hello to your fellow students, say hi to Miss Larmon, say hi. We must say hi to each other, man. I give you a quick few seconds to do that. Who is brave enough to turn on the mics?
Good night, good evening, everyone.
Good evening to you, Denise.
Good night, everyone. How is everyone doing today?
Tyrone, how are you doing? Yes, this is what I need. It's always good for me to hear the voices of students when I don't get to do this every day in person, right? I'm seeing a couple of you in the chat here.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening to you, Chad.
Nice good evening, everyone.
All right. Yeah, please tell me what your name is, love, because I see you saying that I didn't get it right. You must tell me what it is.
So it's Asta.
Asta. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you, Asta. All right. And to everybody in the chat who's saying hi, we're here for it, right? So I am going to start first and foremost by asking everybody here. You can again use your chat, use the messaging in the chat if you want to. I will say it out loud for those who are not able to see the chat. Right, let me know what's going on there. But also feel free to use your mic as well so that persons can hear what's going on your end, right? So I want to start out first and foremost by asking everyone how y'all are doing this evening. Yeah? Tell me how you're going. A good evening still coming in. How are you people doing?
Tired.
Tired. Asta is tired.
First,
Sitting there at work, stressed, have mercy, coping, overwhelmed. All right. So we need, yes, Ms. Larman is reminding us that we have the YouTubers as well, which is why we want to be as interactive as possible so they can hear from their fellow students, those of them who are on YouTube. And I forgot to say good evening to the YouTubers as well. Good evening, love. Right? So,
I'm trying to keep up, Miss Morgan.
What's that, Denny?
I'm trying to keep up.
You're trying to keep up?
But I'm trying.
All right, that's fine. That's fine. Dudley wants to sleep as the rain is falling on her end. All right. But I would hope that everybody, in spite of the feeling, the sensations that we're feeling over and all that we can say we're relatively okay. And I'm asking and hoping that because I'm fully aware that exams for some people start next week or week after next, depending on the faculty and the program that you're in. And what I'm hoping that we can get over is any kind of super anxiety that we're experiencing this evening or have been experiencing in the last couple of weeks. Because as we well know, exam period tends to be a little bit more stressful. But what we certainly want to be talking about this evening is ways to get around that, ways to beat that stress, or to, if we can't beat it, because some of us just going to be feeling like that all the time, how we can manage ourselves during this exam period so that we're not going into the season feeling too overwhelmed or feeling like we're incapable of achieving. Right? That sounds like a good plan for us to talk about this evening. Yeah, anybody needs help with that?
Yes, yes.
Perfect.
Yes.
Perfect.
Yes,
All
yes.
right. So I'm not going to keep you here for long, right? Fully aware that we want to do this real quick so that people can get back to the study. So let's see how people can go. First and foremost, I think that I identified when I started this university experience is that quite a few students aren't so aware of either one, how best they learn, or two, the fact that their learning styles and their strengths in the different learning styles have changed, right? And why is this important for you all to know? This shift that could have happened, even if you have done a learning style assessment previously, whether in high school, whether in your first year, whatever it may be, it's very important for us to kind of zone into ourselves to realize the changes that may be occurring for either each semester, either you yourself, you're developing each day, we all are, for how you might need to be approaching the different courses, as well as how you just need to be tuning into yourself and realizing I'm exhausted, so I probably need to switch up my approach. Now with this virtual engagement that we've all had to be doing, given the global pandemic that we're experiencing, quite a few, if not all of it, because I do know that there are some instances where persons can get on campus, right? I should ask that, is anybody able to come on campus? Anybody has classes on campus? Or everybody's doing it virtually? I'll give a couple seconds.
I have classes on campus.
Okay, so Mark has classes on campus. Anybody else? Kathariana says she has some classes on campus as well. All right. Denise is fully virtual. All right, no problem there. So we'll have a nice mixture in the conversation that we're having here this evening, right? So we want a virtual class but face-to-face labs. There we go. Thanks for that, Tamara. Right? So we want to, first of all, be fully aware of how it is that our learning is being delivered. How is it your lectures, your classes, whatever it may be that you're doing, how are all of these things being delivered? And then I want you to kind of check in with yourself, and I'm going to just ask this out right now. Are those methods working for you? How your classes are being delivered, your labs, whatever it is you're doing, do you think that that's working for you? The pause there, so make me feel like that's a no, right? And I'm going based on what I've discussed with students here, right? Now, the truth is that this virtual exchange that we have going on works for some and for others, just like how face-to-face classes won't necessarily work for everybody. But again, the power here is you being able to assess and say, okay, I'm in this situation, it is either working or not working for me. How can I manage myself a bit better? Because and I would hope this is the case for everybody, you're all still wanting to pursue these degrees. The very fact that you're all as students, still registered students, still going to classes, and I hope all of us going to classes, the fact that you're still going to your classes, still doing your assignments, submitting your research, all these different things, absolutely shows that you are very interested in your own academic and personal and professional pursuits. Therefore, you are about getting things done. You're being intentional about your education. And I've been calling these set of students that we have now all over the world. We're all COVID conquerors, if you will, the fact that we're still choosing to keep going, right? So each of you need to give yourself a little applause for the fact that you are still in the spaces, no matter how exhausted you are, no matter how overwhelmed you feel, you are still pushing through each day when you're going to classes, in spite of the challenges you're facing, right? So having given a little big up for that and commending y'all for still pushing, I want you to assess yourself and say right now, whether or not you feel that those lectures or how the material is being delivered is working for you. Do you feel like you're grasping the material each day, each class, each lecture, each lab, each tutorial, right? Do you feel that way? Tyrone say, Tyrone what? You don't have a choice to do what? Because you don't have a choice but to stick with the classes because money has already been put in. I hear you on that. But even in spite of that, I'm sure we have many students who decided to give up. They pay their fees and they're like, yeah, they're still going to drop out. So you mustn't take away the fact that you are still pushing through Sir Tyrone, even though Asta is there agreed with you, Bazar, right? But yes, each of you are absolutely COVID conquerors. I'm claiming that for each of us, we're still pushing through and pushing forward in spite of the challenges, right? Now, why I ask students to figure this out. So I might not have figured it out yet, but it's you trying to figure out what's working for you. If the classes and how it's being delivered isn't working for you, we need to figure out, each and every one of us, and I'm saying myself as well, because I'm certainly still learning each day, where we all are. How is it that we can change our learning methods to suit ourselves? Because the truth is, in this digital age, information is at our fingertips for those of us who have access to technology, right? Those who are on YouTube, they might be able to Google same time, as well as those of you who are in the Zoom chat here, you can Google at the same time as well. You can type in self-management techniques. You can type in study skills techniques. You can type in what a biology lab is supposed to look like, depending on what it is you're studying, right? Access to information is huge right now, given the information age that we're in. But what might not necessarily work for you is how you are trying to learn the information, as opposed to you just saying, okay, I'm going to Google everything, right? And it's important for us to know that, again, as we shift into this exam period. Right? So the first thing I want to do, and I'm going to drop it in the chat here. If you have done this before, again, as I said, it's fine for you to do it again. If you don't, that's also fine. You absolutely have the option, right? Before I do that, I have a question.
Yo, Chad, Jenna, weed.
Oh, okay, Jordan. Jordan, let's be careful there. Asani, go ahead, love.
Yes, good evening, everybody. I am one of the unlucky students that unfortunately started out late. Like really late. So I had to do a lot of catching up, even up to this day. I don't fully catch up as yet, but I'm hanging on. So how do you give some advice to somebody like me, you know, to like I'm doing 5 courses, kid you not, I'm doing all 5 courses. And how do you give some advice to somebody like me that's exams are near? How can I like prioritize my time, or any advice at all would do so?
Just one advice.
Just some advice.
What are you studying, Asani?
All right, my major is economics.
Economics. All right. And if you don't mind sharing, how many weeks did you had passed before you joined it?
Almost a month.
Almost a month. All right. So the first thing I'm going to ask you, so we're doing a quick shift here in case Asani has to leave, right? Because certainly this is something we want to cover. Asani wants to know, for those of you who may not have heard, how it is that he can better manage himself, given the fact that he came into the system late. You're a first year, Asani?
Yes, I am first year.
Okay, got you. So welcome to the campus. Let me just say that, welcome to the University of the West Indies. Right, and again, you are a super COVID conqueror, because so you got in late and you're still pushing through, right? So this again will tie into quite a few things that we're going to be talking into here, right? Even if you are late, you still have access to the information. You can download the lectures, you can access your tutors, make contact with the lecturers or so on, and find out what kind of assistance they can provide you with, right? That's the first thing, because not all information that you want to get, you just want to be Googling. So by all means, access those lectures. Make sure you have the information, whether it is the PowerPoints, tutorial presentations, whatever it is it may be. Once you have access to those, that's when we shift now into how it is that we're going to go about our learning, right? I'm dropping in the chat here a learning style assessment. For those of you who are on YouTube and not able to access the chat that we have here, you're going to go to educationplanner.org. That's www.educationplanner.org. You're going to go to students, go to self-assessment, and then I want you to go to learning styles, right? So I'm going again, educationplanner.org. You're going to click on students, is at the top in the options. You're going to go to self-assessment, then you're going to learning styles. And I want you to answer those questions so that you can identify your strengths in the different learning styles, right? Now, for people like Asani, do you know your strengths in the different learning styles? Do you know what the learning styles are?
Well, I don't know the learning styles that you speak of, but I just know that in certain situations I study well. That's all basically.
In certain situations you study well?
Yeah.
All right. So this is the why you need to do this assessment, right? And we're going to shift into study skills as we're wrapping up. But first, thanks again for sharing, Asani. We want to start off by educating those of you who aren't so clear as to what the learning styles are. Now, I always ask students, how best do you learn, right? Some of you might be saying, okay, I learn best when I hear information. I learn best when I'm writing. I learn best when I'm reading, whatever it may be, right? The three primary learning styles: auditory, visual, and tactile. For those of you who didn't know them, let's break it down a little bit more. For auditory learners, that's those who learn best by hearing. Visual learners, those who learn best by seeing. And tactile learners, you want to be a bit more hands-on into how you're approaching your education or whatever it is you're doing in life, right? Now, when you do the assessment, and by all means, go ahead and do it, or if you want to do it later on, that's fine as well. I want you to do it because your strengths in these different learning styles is how we're going to be approaching our studies, and in particular, how it is that we're going to be preparing for our examinations, right? That's the first thing that we're going to be talking about here. Now, once you have identified your strengths in these different areas, and some of us may be primarily strong in one learning style, we might have a nice combination, whatever it is, you can't do no wrong. You cannot do wrong. You can't go wrong, forgive me, in whatever the strengths are, right? So there is no failing grade here in how you're learning. The goal here is to learn. And we want to know the strengths so that you can then determine how it is you're going to approach your studies, right? So let me go again. You need to know how best you learn, identify your strengths in the different learning styles, and then we're going to need to talk about how it is we can implement certain study strategies to suit our different learning styles, right? Now, if you've done this before, again, no problem with you doing it again. It's always good way to have a reminder. And once you've done that and you've identified the different strengths, we're going to be talking about how we can shift things up to suit our own personal study strategies. Because again, how the information is being delivered to you in these virtual lectures may not necessarily work for you. For some, it may, and even if it does, it doesn't hurt for you to say, let me see how I can improve things, right? But we definitely want to see how we can maximize, optimize, and all these other synonyms or experience so that we are putting our best feet forward for the exam season. So once you've identified your strengths in the learning styles, I want you, and for those of you who aren't sure, I should probably do a breakdown for you. Let's talk about it this way. Our auditory learners, if we are setting up a TV, the auditory learners are going to be the one who is going to be like, all right, I'm not going to necessarily read a book right now. I want somebody to tell me how this is going to be done. Say, I might have a YouTube lecture playing a YouTube video, whatever it may be, playing in the background, and they're telling you how to set up your TV, how to set up your laptop or so on, because you just decide that you can't bother read anything right now, right? I know those people. I'm primarily an auditory learner myself. I will read, but I prefer to have a conversation or for somebody to tell me, for me to better identify how it is to go about pretty much everything I do. The visual learners are the ones who are going to take up themselves and they're going to be saying, okay, let me read this because I don't want to make any mistakes. Maybe a little bit more detail oriented because you're like, let me follow everything by the book. Doesn't hurt if you're not that person as well, by the way, right? So the visual persons are wanting to see the information, whether they are diagram that they've identified or the very booklet that you get in, like the setup thing, that kind of situation. That's what you want. And then we have the tactile people who are going to be like, listen, I'm not going to read. I don't want nobody to talk to me. I'm going to just figure this out by myself, right? So I'm going to just come and I'm going to set up the computer, the TV, whatever it is that we're using here. I forget what we're starting off with. I'm going to set it up. I'm going to just play it by ear and I'm going to see how I can make these connections. Those are for individuals who will have the primary strength in the three different ones. Then you have the persons who are a pretty nice mixture, right? And again, when you look at the strength, you're going to see how your points break down. And when you see the person with the mixture, they're the ones who are going to be like, all right, maybe I need to do a little reading first. I'm going to kind of scan through the notes. Then I'm going to play a video in the background to hear what's going on. And then I'm also going to be doing all of that while I'm working on it. So I'm here setting up the computer while I'm reading, or rather scanning through the booklet. And I'm also playing a video because I just want to be putting myself in the best position at all points in time. Now I'm using that analogy for you to kind of see yourself. Where would you fall into place when it comes up to that? How do you think you best would suit? Where would you best be suited in that kind of setting? Are you the person who is playing the video? Are you the person who is going to be doing the scanning first? Are you the one who is going to leave everything to one side and just go hands-on? That's what you need to identify. Or maybe you're the one who is going to be all three at the same time because you kind of want to be like, listen, I don't want to make any mistakes here. Either way, that's what these learning styles and strengths are about. You identifying what your approach would be. So persons like Asani who is coming in late, this is where now you need to be saying here, okay, I'm late. All this information is at my fingertips. I hope Asana, the information is at your fingertips right away. That's a different conversation, but I hope that that's the case for you, right? You have all the information. Again, if you don't have it, let's get it as best as we can. How is it that I can put myself in the best position given one, the environment I'm in, two, the resources I have, so is whether or not to have computer, internet, a space that I can actually get my work done, and how is it that I can position myself literally to get myself in the best environment to study the information, right? Now, studying and how you do it facilitates your own learning, right? And again, there's a lot coming here, but we can always have conversation. Talk to me if you're not understanding, right? How you study facilitates your learning. So if you're primarily an auditory learner, but all you're doing is reading, we need to talk about what kind of strategies you need to be implementing. If you're primarily a tactile learner, but you find yourself doing a lot of watching of videos and you're not actually putting any practical work in it, any hands-on work, you are not putting yourself in the best position to learn. So it's one thing to know the learning styles and the different strengths. It's a completely different thing for you to be saying, okay, I'm implementing these strategies for me to get the best in terms of my whole learning experience. And I'm saying this because I know there are people here who have done this with me. You've done the learning style assessment and you know how best you learn. Again, this can switch up depending on the course, environment, and so on. But if you know within yourself that let's go for each course, you're doing 5 courses for the semester, and you know for one course, you probably need to do a little bit more listening. For another, you probably need to do some more writing and so on. But you are not necessarily making any changes. That's where you need to be zoning in on yourself now and saying, okay, what is it that I'm doing wrong and how can I change my approach? This is where the self-management part of your approach to your education comes in, right? So if you know you have been sitting down for the last 2 to 3 weeks, just reading over PowerPoint slides, going to your lectures, but you're not feeling like you're grasping the material, we need to check ourselves and be like, all right, Tamara, Mark, Asa, Sharika, everybody who is in this space, we need to take charge of ourselves now, and we're switching things up right now, this evening, after this conversation that we're having here, because we're going to see if we can put in a couple hours of studying before we go to bed at 10. And it is me hoping that this is something that you're doing, because I'm very much about you getting rest in spite of everything else that you have going on, right? So if you have realized that these techniques that you have been implementing aren't working for you, we need to make the change right now, right? It all comes back to us saying to ourselves, being very real with ourselves, that this isn't working or it is working. If you find that having conversations, one-on-one conversations, small group conversations with your tutors, your peers, whoever maybe works for you, see how quickly and how often you can engage in that after a lecture or even before a tutorial. If you find that listening to a YouTube video, even following content creators on TikTok or whatever it may be that you might be using who are putting information out there to suit you works, do that. What you should not be doing is continuing to pursue these different strategies by saying, let me say no, for an auditory learner, I'm going to sit down and read hours on end. For a tactile learner, I'm just going to be reading again on end. Because in truth and in fact, these traditional ways of studying that people have been using however many years ago, that has shifted. Again, we're in the information age. You just need to be able to position yourself as best you can, pending the resources that you have, to see how best it is you can maximize your study approaches, right? Now, when we're talking study skills, this is again something that students aren't so clear on. Forgive me while I find this link. Students aren't so clear on how it is they study best, right? And I put it to you that there is no one way to study. It boils back again to the individual and what works for them, right? I'm, however, dropping in the chat, and for those on YouTube, I'm sorry I'm not going to get to do this link, right? To click on this link rather, I do offer a study skills check. We can do this in a one-on-one session or a small group session if you want, but I'm allowing the students to do a quick assessment that I have provided using Google Docs, right? So if you want to contact me about that, please, we can do that afterwards. I'll leave my information towards the end. So in that study skills check, It's pretty much giving you the different ways you can approach your studies, right? And again, you might find ways in there that you yourself aren't doing, as well as you might find that there are options in there that are missing because you do something completely different. But what it's doing is giving you a breakdown of the different ways that you can be organizing yourself, organizing your studies. Yes, thank you so much, Angel. Angel is sharing the links on YouTube. Thank you, I appreciate that, right? So when you get that and you're going through it, I want you to kind of take note. It does give you the option to click and submit the information, but I also want you to do some jottings, right? And see how it is you can be potentially switching up your own approach so that you're positioning yourself as best you can, right? Now, again, these vary, and it boils from how it is you organize your notes, who it is you reach out to for assistance, how it is you position yourselves literally in an environment. Like, are you in a space that is conducive to your own learning? From you rewarding yourself, like, because again, and students always say to me when I do this assessment, they're surprised to the rewarding option. But for me, it's very important that you are all giving yourself some kind of ratings, if you want to, motivation in order for you to continue studying. And these rewards vary. These rewards might be you saying, rather, I'm going to sleep a little later on Saturday. I'm going to go and treat myself to an ice cream. I'm going to watch a movie, right? Whatever it may be, I'm going to talk to my partner. I'm going to spend some time with my family members, that kind of thing. Making time for these other things that matter so that you are not burning yourself out, which is a very popular thing that students find themselves in. I think that I hear students say a lot, particularly at this point in the year. You're burnt out because you aren't taking care of yourself mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. You know, you're just on go mode. Some of you are not even going at all because you're drained already, right? But there needs to come a point where you are resting. You are having your meals. You're making contact with individuals, sensible individuals who can support you and say, all right, Alex and or Mark, whoever it is, whoever you are, you can do this, right? It's not just about you doing it on your own. And if you feel you don't have those individuals in your life right now, I put it to you, you can reach out to me, you can reach out to your community student advisors, you can reach out to Ms. Larman. There are resources on this campus that even though you may not be able to interact with them in person, they are there for you to support you as best as can, because all of us here are about you getting your own education. Remember, we're all COVID conquerors here. We're trying to get this done in these few weeks so that we can get this semester out of hand, right? So if you have identified your study strategies, and it should help you again determine what is and isn't working for you, what changes you need to be making, then we need to be saying, okay, exam mode is, I should probably ask that, when do exams start for you folks? Tell me what time we're working with here. Anybody wants to tell me?
In the teens, 16, 17 for me.
December 16, 17. I see,
Yeah.
boy, some people said December 7 is a popular date, right?
I have an in-course this Wednesday.
Ah, Denise, I feel for you. Ready for it, Denise?
No, honestly, I'm not yet ready.
You're not yet ready, but you're getting ready, right?
Yes.
All right. See, yes, Tyrone, we're feeling it for her. She said, wow. So December 7 is up. Is who have exam December 23rd? Mark, have mercy. I'm sorry for you. You're going all the way down to the wild there, right? Well, I got you there, Mark. Tyrone, you were saying something that was an accident there. Okay.
Accident, yes.
All right, no problem, love. So Tamara is saying, yeah, she has tests Wednesday and Thursday as well. All right. So I'm glad I asked that question. How much time I have? I say I'm not keeping on the hair long, right? So let's talk a little bit quickly now about self-management, right? I kind of touched on one second opening on one day. This, all right. Yeah, I'm feeling it now. The pressure is on, right? And I'm feeling it for even when I'm not sitting in the exam. This is something I do with students every semester, right? You have, for the most of you, 2 weeks? No? Yeah, I'll call it 2 weeks before exams start, right? And before that, several of you have indicated that you have, some of you still have been semesters, assignments, research papers, whatever it may be. So now we need to have a conversation about how it is we're going to be managing ourselves for the next 2 weeks in preparation for the exams, right? So we've spoken about the fact that you should have identified your strengths in the different learning styles. So you know how it is you learn best. Having learned that, you're going to talk about how it is you're going to be switching up your study strategies. If you have to, if it's working for you, that's fine. But if you realize that you need to be switching up your study strategies based on how best it is you learn, then we need to see how we can do that as soon as possible. I'm suggesting this evening, right? So that's something that I want you to be doing as soon as possible. But even having done that, you can be saying, okay, I want to make these changes, but how is it I'm going to do that? Because, you know, we have different individuals talking to me about the different course materials, everything's being delivered in a different way. You have people at home making demands of you. Either you have to be supporting your siblings, your parents asking you to do all these different things. Some of you might be working. You're all individuals doing a multitude of things, right? The first thing I'm going to say where this is concerned, hang on. I need some tips for one exam I have around the 7th, for which I'll be tested on all topics, that's very bad, topics and chapters in September. All right, Denise, this is something you want me to talk about now, or this is like a one-on-one thing? I'll see if I can touch on that, right? Right, so forgive me.
Yes, if you have the time, you can touch it now.
All right, no problem, right? We'll see how best we can do that, right? So you have these different bits of information coming to you. You have a different stuff going on at home, all these demands. The very important thing here, folks, is going to be you prioritizing, right? What is it that is the most important thing or thing that you need to be doing right now? And I know this is something that people say all the time. And again, you can hear it, but whether or not you're doing it is a completely different conversation. You might know that you need to, or not might, you should know that you need to study, but you're finding yourself on Netflix or whatever it may be a lot because you just feel like you can't bother, you're overwhelmed, you're exhausted. That's absolutely normal and it's fine, right? But we need to check into ourselves again. See Danielle here saying she's tired, and that's fine. Y'all should be. We're all tired. It's a lot happening, and this kind of interaction takes a lot out of individuals, which is where the self-management comes into play, folks. It absolutely comes in. You would have heard me say it earlier. Rest is critical. Exercise is critical. You know, making contact with individuals is something that I highly recommend. Some of you may not need it, but I highly recommend. If you feel you need to talk to a counselor, the university counseling service is here for you, right? We'll have tutors, we'll have lecturers who are willing to engage, or most of them should be. If you're having that issue, please let me know, right? But if we're exhausted, the truth of the matter is you can't do it on your own, right? We need to, hold on, send the link for the learning style assessment. Give me a second here, right? We don't want you to be feeling that this is something that you have to be doing on your own, which is why we have resources here to help you out as best you can. There you go, Patricia, right? So having said that, what is it that you are doing with your time each day? Oops, I sent to the wrong person. Forgive me there. Did they drop it in for me? Right, there we go. Thanks so much, Angel. What is it that you are doing with your time each day? Right? And this is something that I ask myself each day. You know, how are we maximizing our time? You know, how is it that we are engaging the time we do have? If you have 24 hours and you are getting $1,000 for each hour you are spending, are those funds being invested properly? You know, you want to look at yourself and say, okay, I've been spending only 3 hours in classes each day, but I'm spending 6 hours on Netflix, right? I'm spending all the rest of my day on Instagram, whatever it may be. You need to look at yourself and say, okay, maybe I'm not functioning the best I can because mentally I'm not in the right headspace. So we need to identify support systems as well so that we can set ourselves on track, right? That's for those of you who might be spending a little bit more time socializing or watching TV, whatever it may be. The flip side is we might have persons who are doing the absolute most. You're going to all the classes, you're going to work, you're taking care of your siblings, you're doing all these additional things, right? And you are absolutely exhausted again, because there are different types of exhaustion. So we need to talk about how it is we're going to manage all those things, right? The first thing I'm going to say for those of you who feel that you have a lot of things going on and you're not able to manage them, I encourage you to have conversations with the individuals who you have to be either working with, or living with, or catering to, right? It's not the easiest thing to do, but I find that being able to have those conversations and say to your parents, to your siblings, to your partners that this is what's required of me, you know, This is how many hours I need to be spending in classes, lab, whatever it may be. And you probably need to have another conversation about asking them to give you some flexibility. So it would be a conversation and an agreement where we say, okay, I'm going to be assisting you from X to time. Given what my schedule is here, you're going to see where I will then come and provide some assistance later on. Have those conversations and see if it will help, because quite a few individuals do not know how much time is required of students, right? Each day, each week when it comes to these different classes. So if you have, I'm going to read this real quick, Chad. If you have those conversations, it is my hope that they will become a bit more aware of what their demands are. Some of you, your parents maybe didn't go to university, or even when they were at university, certainly they weren't doing it during a pandemic, you know, so they're not aware of the demands right now, and things have certainly shifted in the education system. So have those conversations, I encourage you, so that you not only would be able to identify additional support systems that might be like, okay, then I never realized that you were here studying, going to classes for 8 hours a day. We'll probably need to give you a bit more time here, and then we're going to ask you to do this on another day, right? Those of you who I'm seeing student leaders in here, you have to be doing this for the different students that you are also serving while you're a student yourself. Have these conversations and identify support systems who may also be able to better assist you in doing what you want to do. And Nikisha here is saying not everyone is supportive. Totally understand that, Nikisha, which is why I'm also saying identify support systems that work for you, right? I am gladly offering my services here. This is what I do every day. I talk to students. I will see how best we can help them navigate this whole situation. You have your community student advisors. You have Ms. Lermon. You have tutors and lecturers. Again, don't think that because the individuals you have around you folks aren't necessarily working for you, they're not supporting, means that you don't have any support at all. I guarantee you that this university that you are in, we're all here trying to offer support to students right across the board. That's what we're here to do. So don't just depend on the persons you have immediately around you. If you don't have a supportive partner, if you don't have supportive parents, if you don't have supportive, whatever it may be, we have support systems on campus here, because we're all about you getting to the place you want to be at, academically, personally, professionally, and otherwise, right? Just reach out and ask for the assistance. Please, I beg you, right? So having identified the possible support systems, having identified also when you do your best work. This is something I should touch on real quick, because I have a lot of individuals who will come to me and they're like, Mrs. Morgan, I'm going to get up 5 o'clock and I'm going to do all these different things at this time. And when you look at it, that's not the time when they're feeling the most energized. These things again boil back to you identifying what works for you. So don't say you're going to study for 2, 3, 4 hours early in the morning when you know you are not a morning person. Don't say you're going to get up midnight when you know as you reach home, you're going to drop asleep, and that's not going to work for you. When is the best time each day for you to do your work? Maybe for you, it's on the weekend. Maybe for you, it's after work, you go home, you grab a quick shower, you eat something, and you do, if it's even 1 or 2 hours, maximize those 2 hours before you have to get up for work, which would again mean you boiling into and understanding how best you learn, right? So if you've had a long day and you're exhausted, but you know you have to prepare, how can you be the most effective when it comes down to this 1 or 2 hours that you have? All right, I have a headache, I don't feel like reading. I'm going to see if I can possibly bring up a YouTube video, play back a lecture. So I'm at least hearing the information and using the time effectively, as opposed to me saying I'm going to sit down and try reading through 20, 30 plus PowerPoint slides, given the fact that I'm not feeling well and I'm not on top of things to read for hours on end, right? So this is really just me picking your brain. Folks, there is no one way to approach your studies. It really boils back to you identifying how you are functioning and whether or not it is working. Also keeping in mind that these things change for you each day. You are not the same person all day, every day. I need to go up and see what Denise had said. I'm trying to find it back here, Denise, right? Is keeping in mind that each day will be different for you. So each day will have to be getting up, not have to, because it doesn't work all the time. It's about you being intentional about how it is you're approaching your studies and seeing how you can switch things up based on what's happening for you that day, right? So Denise had said she has tips for one exam around the 7th. You will test it on all topics and chapters since September. are the needs? So you need to talk to me here now. Is the concern that you have to be reviewing everything, or you have to be going over? What's the concern there?
All right. So I'm behind in a lot of what do you say now, recordings, right? Because I plan to go back over there. Actually downloaded them, but in the process of doing other assignments for other courses and things like that, I still don't cover as much as them. Plus we have to read the chapters because our lecturer said we should read through the chapters in detail because based on how she set the exams. So that's really my main concern. How can I really cover so many things within the short time that I have with doing other things, because I still have assignments, group work, and so on to submit.
All right. So fair question. The first thing I'm going to say to you is there is absolutely no way you're going to be able to read all chapters of any book right now. I mean, I don't know what it is you're studying, unless it's like a short novel for literature or something like that. That's just not possible, right?
Right.
If everyone is saying 20 or 30 PowerPoint, it would be so bad, right? So let's be very real with ourselves. If you have all this information, we need to be very particular about how it is we're going to be approaching it. Again, Denise, this boils back to your learning strengths and how you can approach it. And I think you could also do as well is probably reach out to your lecturer, even though she's saying read all the chapters or so on. You might want to ask if there are any recommendations you have for those kind of approaches, and I'm going to hope that the lecturer is that kind of individual who will be able to speak with you. Speak to a tutor as well, because many of them may have recommendations based on the different courses that you are doing as to how you can approach it. There are certainly different approaches for different courses, for different exam settings, multiple choice versus essay writing and so on. So you want to find out how you can go about it by asking the persons who are going to be giving the papers to you or writing the papers, whatever it may be, how they think you can approach it. And this is also important for you to kind of see how you can tune into the lectures as well, because sometimes you may be getting some advice in the very lectures and tutorial. They're giving you hints, right? If that doesn't happen, you still have the information. My recommendation, look at the course content that you've been given, right? Most course content, and this is where I'm talking about like the modules where they break down different content areas, give you an idea as to where the weight is most important, right? So you want to be able to go through the different, let's call them topics, right? The different topics, and you're going to say, based on each of them, if you have been going to your lectures, even if you haven't, you should be still accessing the lectures yourself. Based on what you have been grasping or have not been grasping, which one of the areas do you feel you are the strongest in or the weakest in, right? Yes, I'm being given the type here, right? Yes, I can do that, right? So which one of the areas do you feel you are the weakest in? And I want you to zone in on those areas. Because the truth is, again, if you've been attending your lectures, observing the downloads and so on, you know some of the information. You probably just need to say, okay, which areas are you not as strong in, and you're going to zone in on those. So it becomes...
Yeah, that's the case.
Come again?
Yeah, that's the case. I need to zoom in on more detail, but I've been listening to them. So in class, that is, but I was able to make notes and read and catch up. But I think some information is lodged in my brain, but I just need to widen it because it's not only what's on the recording or on the slides that's coming in the exam.
Absolutely, absolutely. So kind of look into the different course areas and give yourself like a quick self-evaluation. If you have 5 topics, out of the 5 topics, which one do I need to spend a little bit more time on? Would I be able to answer a question from these different areas? If not, spend a little bit more time on those. Because if you find that you can do a quick scan through or find a YouTube video, again, depending on your learning strengths and so on, you can quickly go over those materials in that format, as opposed to if you find that you may need to be a bit more detailed in your approach based on how the information is being given, right? So don't be overwhelmed at the fact, well, let me not say that, because absolutely if you're feeling overwhelmed, that's fine as well, right? Not fine, but it's normal, right? Don't allow yourself to become too overwhelmed, however, unless you sit down and you realize that having assessed yourself, you feel like you're behind in all areas. That's where we need to talk about how it is that we're going to be utilizing different things and different strategies. And it may require a conversation where you're going to have to be very real about yourself and say, okay, I'm going to make some hard decisions about which courses I'm going to prioritize and so on. All right. Now I'm being given
Yes, thanks.
Of course, then it's no problem at all, right? So you're getting some recommendations to follow course outline. Catherine, I think that I don't know what course outline is. That's a new one I'm seeing, but that's fine as well. I would absolutely recommend that you use the different apps and so on as well. I'm also saying don't spend your time researching study apps when in truth and in fact, you can be implementing some changes on your own. I've heard from so many students who, when they look, they've downloaded all these different apps and so on. And I'm like, really, you could have been doing this on your own. But I would recommend that if you have found like sleep apps, flashcard apps or so that you feel work better for you, do that, right? Use those as opposed to you trying to download a million and so on other apps, right? As I say in the survey about my surprise, showed me a lot about myself. There we go. I'm happy to hear that, Asani, right? That's what we're about. You identifying your strengths. Asani is saying where he has realized some things that he didn't know about himself based on assessment. That works, right? And Catriona is saying the course. Oh, right. Sorry, Catriona. Thanks for that. So she was saying it's the course outline. And you're most welcome, Denise, right? So I'm going to wrap up here. We certainly don't want to have you for too long. I know we covered a lot here. I'm hoping that this is an auditory and visual setting, and I did provide the links for you all so that we get a little more tactical as well. But I'm going to absolutely say that for any one of you who needs to have a conversation with me, if you have any additional questions here, please go ahead and contact me. I am available to each and every one of you. You know, you can give me a call or message me at 876-371. Let me put that in the chat as well, 2047. That's 876-371-2047. Feel free to message me, give me a ring or so on when you need to. I'm here to, again, support you in any way I can. All right, I'm going to wish each and every one of you the absolute best for this exam season, and let us know if we can assist you as you press forward. Right, all the best to each and every one of you. And I am now going to turn over to Angel.
Thank you so much, Miss Morgan. I completely agree with you. And that some of the times we find all these study hacks and we believe that we're staying on track, we're being productive, and we don't realize that we ended up going down this wormhole of YouTube, and we end up procrastinating by trying to find study hacks. So we have to ensure that we try to find a balance in everything that we do and try to figure out what's best for us, because everything is a trial and error.
Yes,
at first I thought I was auditory learner, and now I realized that I'm a combination of the two. I am auditory, sometimes I'm visual, because if I'm only hearing it, I'm not seeing it, it doesn't click. So we just have to try and try again. And
that's true. That's all we answer each day. Literally trying every day, switching things up as we move along. We'll get there eventually.
Yeah, 100%. And so thank you again for joining us.
Of course, no problem. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. I'm now going to ask Mrs. Michaela Gonzalez Campbell to join us and share her experience during her time at UE and how she managed to navigate the school system as a student while balancing her multiple roles here on campus.
Hi everyone. It's like my first event or anything like that with the new name. So it's a very special moment. It's my pleasure to be here. I feel like Miss Morgan, I feel like she covered everything. So I'm not sure what exactly I'm going to touch on. But I do, hi everybody. But I do know a lot of what they said. I can share personal experiences that I guess will kind of bring the points home. So when I was doing AXI, guys, because I did actuarial science in terms of my undergrad, and then for my master's, I did economics. When I was doing actuarial science, I actually was not a big studier. The thing that worked for me was going to classes. So what I used to do is I used to go to classes and I used to sit at the front and I pay attention, because when I learn in class, after that, I usually don't necessarily need to do a lot of the work after. I also was not a nighttime studier. So to be honest, when all of my friends would go to the library and say, okay, yeah, man, we'll wait still till 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. First of all, if anybody follows me on social media, I think I've said it enough times that sleeping is what I do. Sleeping is one of the most important things to me. So guys, honestly, that is something I had to be real. And I heard Miss Morgan touch on that you have to be completely honest with yourself about who you are and what works for you. So I know that honestly, guys, by the time 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock touch, that's it for me. So even though, yes, all of my friends would be going to the library and all of them would be studying in the night, I tried it with them a couple of times, but I would always fall asleep. So I was saying, clearly, this is not for me. And I had to admit to myself that, hey, that's okay. So I had to talk with them, and what they would actually do is we would actually start studying a little bit earlier, but they also don't like to study in the day, right? So we had to compromise. So let us say we start studying at 6 instead when, it's bright out. So that's when I function. And then at 10, 11 o'clock, I would leave them so that I can go home and sleep. But again, I'm just saying it took me being honest with myself to also not feel guilty, because growing up, to be honest, I feel like parents would make us feel like if you're not staying up till 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, it's almost as if they want you to feel like you're wasting time. So I had to deal with that just to say, okay, what actually works for me. Funny enough, when I was doing my undergrad as well, going to the library did not work for me. I hated going to the library. I still don't think I ever got around to loving it, but when I was doing my master's, I did find myself in the library a bit more. And Ms. Morgan was talking about accepting that your study habits will change. So not because something works for you in one season means that it's gonna work in all seasons, right? So I don't know. I think the library is a little bit too quiet for me. That may be ironic to some persons, but the perfect study environment for me is actually not somewhere that's too noisy. So I'm not saying in the middle of like, too much confusion, but then I also don't like when the place is too quiet. So as I said, for the library, I don't know, I just feel like I can hear all of my thoughts, and then make it worse if you don't study it, so you don't really have much thoughts. Like, it's just a lot going on there. So I was like, no, I need a little bit of stuff around me to inspire. So I want to be in a space that doesn't have a lot of action happening. So sometimes I would like to be like outside as well. If you follow me, I love nature. So sometimes I want to be outside, maybe like under a tree. So it's like I see persons passing. So it's like they're not interrupting or disturbing me, but there's still movement happening around. So I find that worked very well for me. So even the gazebos over by law, because again, I'm not a law student, so it was good. Nobody not going to stop and talk to me. But at the same time, I'm seeing them walk past. So it's like, it's keeping me awake and all of that. So just pointing that out, that's what worked for me in undergrad. In the master's program now, to be honest, remember I said to you that going to class works for me. When I started the master's program, that was the first year I became guild president, and it was extremely demanding, guys. So I actually did not get to go to classes a lot in the first semester, which was an absolute disaster. Even the persons, they actually didn't even want to let me into the master's program, despite having the grades that I did, because they were saying they had a past president before, and he barely came to classes, and they're like, they don't want somebody where it's just because you're smart, you maybe swat the night before, when you get through, like they actually want persons in their program who are going to be involved and all of that. And unfortunately, the first semester, I do think I let them down, because I really did kind of draw from my smarts and just kind of tell my friends, okay, just explain everything to me. And the thing is, the master's program for econ is a lot of math, and pretty sure, again, if you guys follow me, math is my thing. So it was very easy to not necessarily need to understand, but once you showed me the math of it, I could just do it. But to be honest, I think later that semester, although I got all A's, guys, I felt empty, which was maybe something weird for some persons. Yeah, but you get the grades. But there were things, to be honest, while going through my UA journey, it kind of just became a thing where, okay, I learned the process of how to get by and get good grades. So that's all it became about. But then I guess my passion for learning was reignited. Specifically, as I said, from seeing those persons in class, and I saw that they were asking questions, and I was like, I want that to be me again. So I started to maybe even send other persons from the guild to event, like to, if we had a meeting or something like that, and it didn't necessarily require the president, I would send them to it so that I could be at classes, which definitely changed the game. I started to ask questions in class, and I just felt more present, which also made studying a lot easier, because not because you can study the night or the week before means that it's the healthiest thing to do. And you guys know I will always be an advocate for mental health. Yes, somebody's talking about Danielle, my fave, talking about the importance of delegation before I go into the other stuff. Yes, if there are any other student leaders on the call, that is something I absolutely struggled with. I don't know if it's, I don't exactly know where it's coming from, but I do know I struggled with delegating for a very long time. I want to believe it's because I don't necessarily trust that when I tell persons to go and do something, they're going to do it as well as I do. But that's something I've come to let go of a little bit, not so much over the years. So even in group works, I rather to be the person to do the group work, the project, and I'll put everybody's name on it. That's completely fine for me. But there will come a time for the student leaders who are on the call where you'll realize that life is about mistakes. It's about, you know, you're not going to be perfect all the time. So I would say do not kill off yourself and risk your schoolwork and risk the things that you really want because you're trying to be everything and everywhere for everyone. It's okay to let other persons do it. The point is, I'm pretty sure I wasn't always able to speak like this. I wasn't always able to represent like, you know, the way I am. I had to start somewhere. So even if somebody may not do the best job that you want them to when you send them off to do it, it's still maybe their starting point, and it's okay to be a part of their journey. So if they go ahead and they make mistakes, just speak to them after and say, hey, you know, I actually would have done this differently, and maybe that can be your way of even like helping them. So that's what I would say about the whole delegating. It does work. It does help. Do not try to do it. And as a student leader, I know you have made many promises. I know you want to fulfill every single one of them. But I would say you will have to probably, and it's a smarter thing to do, it's probably better to choose 5 or 6 things that you want to do very well rather than doing 20 things and you barely touch on them. You know what I mean? Because then you don't really get to make an impact. Yes, you've promised all these 10 things, and it's okay. Maybe you can even in your town halls with your students say that to them, like, hey, I know I promised these 10 things. I won't be able to fulfill all 10, but I am willing to help the person who will come after me because all the work is not there for you. You know, so just focus on 5 things I would say that you're going to do extremely well, that people are going to remember you for, and you can do that. And I think it will help for especially the student leaders with your studies, because I can tell you the thing that always comes up is that student leaders always have bad grades. And I'm not sure if there are any athletes here on the call as well, similarly, because they're always at trading and stuff. The talk is always that, oh, student leaders and athletes, they're always going to be the ones where their grades are dropping. Once you go on the gill, your grades going to drop. It's not true. It's just that you have to be conscious of what is important to you. Again, as I said, Miss Margon was dropping all the gems. So, you know, she's talking about what are your priorities, like what you, at the end of the day, life is about choices. Unfortunately, you cannot be the best at everything. So you may just have to choose what are the things you want to be, you know, really good at. So as I said, with the master's program, I started to go back to classes, started to pay attention. I know that worked for me. So, you know, clearly when you do what works for you, sometimes we know exactly what works for us, but then we do the opposite. I'm pretty sure many of us here are guilty of that. But what was very interesting to me was that when I was in the master's program, I actually found myself, I still didn't like studying late at night. As I said, I guess that's just been in terms of going to sleep early. But I did find that the library was something I started to appreciate a bit more. So I just was also saying that don't think that because you don't like something in this season means that, you know, it probably won't change. I think you have to just go with the intuition. If you're studying, something I also say to persons, I am somebody who, when I'm studying, guys, if I say study time, I can start from 10 o'clock in the morning and go till all 10 o'clock in the night. Meaning I don't have to eat, I don't have to break, but that's just me. Like I get so lost in it that I don't have to break. Versus I have other friends, their attention span is very short. And I tell them that too is okay. So what I would say to them is, okay, while you're studying, maybe it is that you need to take every 10 minutes, and it may sound very short, but that may be what you need to keep you going. So maybe you reward yourself and say, okay, if I study for 10 minutes, I get to scroll on IG for 5 minutes, and then you study the next 10 minutes. But you have to do, it don't make sense you're tricking yourself that you're sitting on there for an hour when really and truly, you know, 10 minutes in, you already zoned out. So even stuff like that, I feel like people normally make you feel guilty. Like if you want to scroll or multitask or, you know, go and get food and stuff like that, they make it seem like it's such a bad thing, and it's not necessarily true. In the meantime, just let us maybe touch on some things that you guys did not go over before, because I know I came on late. maybe you guys can just start asking me questions in the chat so that I can just kind of start answering them while talking, rather than waiting until after. So I don't know if anybody has any they want to start off with. I know somebody earlier spoke about not necessarily having a support system. I completely understand. It's funny you said that, because all of my persons who I consider friends, when it comes on to like support system for studying, I think it's only one person in that whole group that I go to. Like, she is my support system. When I was studying for my master's program. So I think you also have to understand that, like what purpose each of your friends may serve. And it doesn't mean that because somebody isn't able to help you with studying, that means that they're a bad friend. It just means that's just not them. But don't try to give somebody a role in your life that they have not shown you that they deserve or that they want, right? That's completely fine. So there are another group of friends that I have. Funny enough, I don't think we're all like we're close, but we're not close. It was actually one of my friends who I am close to. He formed a little group, and we're all entrepreneurs, and we all kind of just come together maybe like once a month, and we talk up. It's like a free space as well, because what I can say is for those persons who are in high, you won't have persons all the time who will understand it. Some people will wonder why you're trying to go for the world, why you want to be a student leader and get good grades. Or even if you're not a student leader, why you want to get all A's, why you can't just pass, you know what I mean? So it's not everybody will understand why you want more. And in that group, I can tell you guys that I feel absolutely safe to speak about all of my accomplishments without feeling like, okay, why do you want so much? And I think it's also everybody here needs a safe space like that, even if it's a person, whether it's your mother, your auntie, a family member, a friend. It's very important to have that safe space, because then it allows you to dream big without worrying if you're going to offend anybody, or does me saying I want to get an A because I know the other person failing, like, does that mean I'm hurting their feelings? Like, you still need a safe space for you to say how much you really want to achieve. Okay, I saw somebody in the chat, so let me just read that comment. Okay, so I think somebody was just saying that the workload, maybe I guess it's something to do with mental health, right? So I was saying that, I'm always an advocate for mental health. I think persons should understand that when you are overworked or you feel really stressed, it is okay to stop. At the end of the day, if you die tomorrow, I mean, it may sound really bad to say, life is going to go on. So I always tell persons, do not let the last memory or the last thing you have, when it is, whenever God calls us to die, it be that you were wasting time or you feel bad that, geez, that was really the last thing I was doing. So I just really think it's important for you to listen to your intuition, listen to when you feel like, okay, I definitely just need a break. I know somebody was talking about the fact that they have so many topics to cover. I was definitely not positioned for an exam I had for the master's program. Let's say it was maybe 7 topics and we had exams like back to back. And I was like, okay, well, I cannot cover all 7 topics. So how am I going to do this? Which is where strategy comes in. I don't know if you guys have access to past papers, but I do know what I had done was I said to myself, okay, for sure, I know this type of question comes on the exam every year, all the time. So if I don't study any other topic, I know I need to study this one. So I started off with that. Then after that, I said, okay, what are the other topics that I see coming up often? And then I went on to do. So it's almost as if I studied in priority of what I was seeing. I also use the exam questions, and even though that I'm a teacher, that's what I do. Like for the CXC questions, I use the CXC questions to help teach, because knowing the information is one thing, guys, but knowing what the questions will look like and how to answer the questions, even more important. So if you do have that, I would say start looking at the past paper questions that you have and like using them to guide what you will study. I have found that has helped, especially even when I was doing AXI, because even though the questions may not be the same, it is by following the chapter or the topics coming from, that question that you kind of get exposed to everything. But in terms of the mental health as well, something that I can be open about, when I was in the 2nd semester of the master's program, this is while I was still guild president, I started to delegate, but then as well, I've spoken about my anxiety issues, as well, very openly. I guess I became very anxious because I felt like I was letting persons down, because I don't think everybody fully understood that I could not be everything and everyone, to everyone. So it's a case where when I started to delegate, yes, it was helping me, but then some persons were like, no, but as guild president, like we want you to be everywhere. So I felt very torn, and it made me very anxious all the time, and I didn't really know what to do with all of that. I also didn't want to give up my grades, and I know that I felt so much pressure that I was saying, I don't really think I'm going to do well on these final set of exams. And I went to the guidance counselor at UWI, which I'm not sure if you guys know, but with your UWI health card, you get free counseling. So that was actually my first experience with counseling, and she was absolutely fabulous. So I went to her, and I believe she saw that it wasn't really getting better. So she had said to me that she would give me a note and she would speak to them to explain that. So I think there was one of the courses, because I think when you get past like half of the course, I think you're not supposed to drop it or you can't drop it. I don't remember exactly how the rules are, but because of what was happening and what she explained to them, they allowed me to drop one of my courses. I think instead of doing the 3, because for the master's program, you generally do 3 per semester because they're heavier, so you don't do a lot. So rather than doing 3, I was allowed to do 2. So even something like that, guys, if you don't get help, you won't have somebody there to advocate on your behalf. Maybe it's not a case that you need to drop the course completely, but maybe it's a case where, maybe getting extra time in the exam would help, so even stuff like that, I believe, would be helpful. So let me go into the chat to see. Oh, again, yeah, so as I said, I just organize it based on how I see the past papers. So I literally would maybe look through 2 or 3 papers, and whatever I see consistently coming up, that's what I prioritize in terms of, okay, I'll study that first, then the next thing, then the next thing. As well, Janelle mentioned something important. She mentioned about going to your tutors. So yes, I can say, even as a tutor, a past tutor, even maybe tell us what is, the topics to look out for, so that when we are tutoring, we can say it to you all. So even that, maybe you can go to you to explain the situation, to say, hey, like, I'm really under pressure. Because as well, if we see a student who really pushing for it and not just asking, oh, can you tell me what's on the exam, that's a different story. You're asking me to give you guidance because time is limited. I can't speak for anybody else, but I know as a tutor, which I have done before, I would tell persons, okay, well, how about you focus, on these 3 areas, and then it's up to them if they want to go and do that. So I'm just saying as well, guys, if you do have access to your tutors, I would suggest that you reach out to them. Okay, so somebody spoke about study timetable. That is so important, because usually I find that when persons make study timetables, the reason they don't stick to it is because they do this thing where it's like 6 to 6:30 math, and then 6:30 to 6:35 stats, and then it's like, by putting this time frame on it and making it so specific, I tried it at first and I thought it would have helped, but instead it made me more anxious. And then the minute is almost as if the minute you don't get to follow that timetable to the T, is like you just feel like a failure. It's a bit of in a sense, because everything gone off track now. So I would say, 1, don't necessarily pressure yourself by putting time slots to it. You can, that's a little bit tricky, but I got out of the frame of mind of that. I would probably just tell myself, okay, you know what, for today, so rather than doing the time, I would say the day. So I would say, okay, for today, I know I want to cover this topic from that subject and from subject A, and I want to cover this topic from subject B. And what I would tell myself is that I have the entire day to figure out how to do that. So it's like every free time I have, I would just work on it, versus actually trying to say, you know what, I'm going to set out 6 to 7:30, especially if you're a student leader, something going to come up, somebody going to call you, you're going to have to go to this meeting or that meeting, and it's just going to throw off everything. Versus if you look at it, sometimes you have free time in the day, or maybe some other free time that you didn't allot anything to, but because you literally zoned in and said, okay, this 6 to 6:30 is the only time I have to study stats, you don't even open up your mind to realizing there are other times in the day that you maybe could have slot in a 5 minutes and slot in a 10 minutes here and there. So I did find that helped in terms of just making a note of, let's say I have 7 topics, I split up the days and I say, okay, today I want to finish one topic. Then maybe over the next 2 days, this one is a little bit longer, so I may need 2 days to cover that topic. And as I said, I just don't tell myself the specific time I need to do it. I just know I have a day to do it. So as long as it takes me, that's how long I'm gonna have to figure out the time. And then as well, I feel like it made me more conscious, because then if somebody came to me and said, hey, you want to go to this concert or you want to go to this, if I know I haven't finished the thing I said I was going to finish for today, then I simply have to say, no, unfortunately, guys, I have to pass on, going with you to here or there. But as I said, with the timetable, I have found that putting the specific slots has been counterproductive for not only myself, but also friends that I have. So I would say to make the timetable, yes, but stay away from the time slots. Okay, and I see that persons are saying they're guilty of that. Yeah, man, it's a very common thing, so that's fine. I don't know if anybody else has any questions. Guys, as well, don't beat up on yourself. I mean, we're in the middle of a pandemic. You guys have never learned like this before. You have never tested like this before. I mean, everything is new. Just give yourself credit that you're even still, you're doing school. You're clearly of hopefully sound mind. So, I mean, just give yourself some credit, because it's a very hard period, just the uncertainty of not knowing when all of this is going to finish, when things are going to go back to normal is enough pressure. So you don't need to add any more pressure to yourself. And I mean, I know, Miss Morgan and others may not want me to tell you this, but if for whatever reason you don't get the grades you want, guys, it's not the end of the world. Like really and truly, I think that was something as well. Even when you're doing CXC, think about it. When you were doing CXC, they made it seem like that was going to be the biggest thing to happen to you in life. And then CXC happens, and then you just move on to the next big thing that's going to happen in life. So there's always going to be a big thing. Just don't stress about it too much. There's always time to start over. Think about it. There are persons, you may end up getting to the end of your degree and then realizing that none of the things that you did was your passion and you want to literally start over and do something new. So I'm just saying, like, as long as you have life, there's always going to be more time for you to start over and do something new. I missed my first class honors when I was in undergrad, and I think I posted that on my social media as well. And at the time, I felt like it was the end all be all, and I was very sad about it. Which is why I wanted to get the distinction in the master's program so much. And to be honest, guys, yes, getting the distinction in the master's program, it did feel good. But guess how long it felt good for? One day. Just one day, because I know I overcame and proved to myself that I could get it. So again, I'm just saying that to say nothing is wrong with overachieving, nothing is wrong with getting the A's. For those persons who can do it, commendations. It is excellent that you can do that. I'm just also saying, for the majority who I know most times don't get those grades and feel pressured, you don't have to do that. What I think you need to really do while you're at UE is figure out purpose, figure out what are the things that are making you feel most alive. Because half of you on the call right now, what you're studying is not what you actually want to do. You're either doing it because your parents want you to do it because you feel like you're already gone too far, so you can't start over and do something else. But it's not like you actually enjoy doing what you want to do. So I feel like what's most important is for you to just, at the end of UE, I think how you know you've earned your degree is if you know what you actually want to do, or you're a step closer to what you want to do. Because as I said, guys, I did actuarial science. By second year, I know I did not want to be an actuary. Yes, I was still good at it, but I was like, no, like, I love to talk to people. I want to interact with people. As I said, I wasn't doing bad in the degree, so I was like, okay, I'll just finish it. But really and truly, I could have just switched at that point, and maybe I'm passionate about education and teaching. I could have maybe gone over to education. I didn't have anything against the humanities, so it wasn't a thing for me where I was like, oh, don't want to go to humanities. No, it wasn't like that. I just also liked what I was doing in terms of the math, but it wasn't what I wanted to do. Same thing, did the master's in econ, realized that's also not what I want to do. And now I'm here teaching math, and math is absolutely what I would love to do. So I'm just saying, guys, don't worry about it too much. Just always, at every step of the way, just try to be your best self and try to give your best. But most important, what you're trying to figure out while you're at UE is trying to figure out self, right? Whether it is literally in terms of what you want to do, the person you want to become. I feel like those are the more important things you need to learn while going through your journey at university. Much more important. Yeah. So that is it. For somebody who finds it difficult to study alone, it is also important for you to decide which friends you want to study with. So there are some friends I know that I can study with them, but not at the beginning of my study process because they are, once the time wasters, but that's it, the attention span thing, right? So when I know at the start, like, oh, you guys have limited time now, you don't really have PV, you can't really be around persons who going to take away from that time. So normally I would study with my more serious friends at the start, and then closer to the end when I know I have enough knowledge, then it doesn't really matter who I study with. But in terms of not wanting to study alone, you still have to find the right group of people to study with. And don't make your study groups too big either, because too many opinions also can just spoil everything. So that's also something to be mindful of. So I think even 5, I think a group of 5 is pretty good. It's the right amount of opinions so that you guys know that if all of you are saying the same thing, at least it's not just you. But then it's not too much opinions where it's like, okay, we don't know where to go from here. But I do wish you guys the absolute best. If nothing else I said today sticks, I just want you to know that, as I said, we're in the middle of a pandemic. Don't pressure yourself. Yes, try to do your best and do all that you can, but it's not the end of the world. The most important thing for you to do, especially during this period, is to discover self, right? When you discover self, that's when you really will start to figure out, your study habits and what you need to be studying and all of that. But I do wish you guys the absolute best. If there's anything else I can help with, you definitely can message me on Instagram. I think that's the place that people interact with me most. In the event that I didn't answer anything here, and I do wish you guys the very best.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Gonzalez Campbell. I love the fact that you said I'm the first person to introduce you as that. Thank you so much for sharing your
Yes, you
personal
are.
experience and your wisdom with us. And now I am going to ask Miss Ashta. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correct because she gave us the correct pronunciation earlier to do the vote of thanks for us before we end.
Oh my goodness. Can everybody see me? Good night. I will forgive you because people often butcher my name, but it's okay. It's Asta Prendergast. Good night, everyone. As I said, this is Asta Prendergast speaking, and I am thankful for the privilege to be given a vote of thanks. On behalf of the UWI Students Office and all my peers who tuned in tonight, I would like to thank both our speakers for this interactive, detailed, and practical session. Millions of thanks to Ms. Morgan, who reminded us that we are COVID conquerors. She stressed the importance of knowing our learning styles and how knowing it can help us to maximize our studies. She also stressed the importance of self-management and the impact of support systems on our success. I would also like to express gratitude to Mrs. Gonzalez Campbell for sharing her personal experience as a former UWI student and a leader. It is always encouraging to hear one of our own persevere through the trials and tribulations at UWI. Mrs. Mrs. Campbell also mentioned the importance of prioritizing tasks and taking a strategic approach to our studies through timetables and so on. Most importantly, she reminded us that it is okay not to do everything. And finally, we are most grateful to both ladies for their time and all the gems that they dropped. It was indeed a great pleasure. I hand over to you, Miss James, my apologies.
No problem. Thank you very much for that excellent vote of thanks. I could not have done it better. And I do apologize again for spoiling the name because I often have that issue and it's a pet peeve of mine. So I am sorry. My sincere apologies goes out to you. And once again, thank you everyone for joining us tonight for our last session for this semester. Starting tomorrow, we'll be sending out an evaluation, asking you guys to give us your feedback on the different sessions that we had throughout this academic semester and how you benefited from them, if you did and if you didn't, and what you'd like for us to have next semester or incorporate into our program that will benefit you the most. And good luck on your upcoming exams. I wish you the best and have a good night.